Hello, everybody, and welcome. So, just going to wait for a little while so everybody can join us and our special guest. There she is.
Okay.
Hi, Marjorie.
Hi,
Welcome. Thank you.
Karen.
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to have you here. And if let me just talk a little bit more about Marjorie. Okay, first of all, if you haven't lived under a rock for the past, I don't know, 30 years, and you're an English teacher, you know Marjorie. But if you don't know her, Marjorie Rosenberg has been teaching English in Austria since 1981. She's worked in the tertiary sector as a teacher trainer and with corporate clients. And she has written a number of business English books. Marjorie is a past coordinator of the IATEFL Business English Special Interest Group and past president of IATEFL. So welcome, Marjorie.
Great to be here.
So today we're here to talk a little bit about Marjorie, of course, but her book. She has a book called 50 Ways to Teach Business English. So Marjorie, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, this is part of a series published by Ways Goose Press in Oregon, uh, which is owned by Dorothy Zemek, who also is extremely well known throughout the world of English language teaching. And they all look more or less the same kind of format of the cover. And I saw them last year at IATEFL, and I thought, wow, that looks interesting. I said, there's nothing on business English, is there? And Dorothy said, no. Are you going to write one? I said,
Nice.
well, think about it. And in the fall, I was busy doing other things, and I noticed I had a little time here, a little time there. So I wrote to Dorothy and said, do you really want this book? Then she said, yes. I sat down and just thought about, okay, which areas would this be? There are actually 51 tips, so 51 ideas, and I put them into categories, and then I started writing the exercises. And as it was going along, it just began to flow. I got new ideas, and it was really, really fun to do.
Excellent. And
It might be better.
and I have to say, I read the book already, and guys, there's so many interesting and practical ideas, and it's just, to the point. I highly recommend, as people are already typing here in the chat box. So, but who is the target audience for this book?
Well, it could be for anyone teaching business English, but it's probably more for those starting out in business English, even if they've been doing general English, or those in a new teaching situation where they think, okay, I really need some new ideas. I'm not sure what to do. This might help. But there are things that experienced trainers may not know. There's a whole section on soft skills with exercises that I took from neurolinguistic programming, which not everybody uses. Neurolinguistic programming was developed actually as a short-term therapy, but is used widely in business communication in the US. And I took ideas from that as well, and then also ideas of quick activities that you can do that are not in other published books. So experienced teachers, I mean, you're an experienced teacher. I assume you also found some new ideas.
Yes, of course. I really found it interesting, the fact that you added topics on soft skills and business skills,
Yes.
because usually we tend to teach students about negotiations, of course, but we don't really talk about the business side of things. We focus a little bit too much on the language side. So I found it really refreshing to see something on soft skills and business skills in a book like this. So thank you for
Yeah.
doing that.
But I mean, setting achievable goals, for example, as a business skill, which is something that students think they know about, but maybe not,
Yeah,
because
true.
yeah,
Uh,
which is exactly why I put it in. Yeah,
it's funny you should mention this because what I see with students is that sometimes they are comfortable doing these sort of things in their language, in their L1, but they kind of become this new professional, very non-experienced professional, I would say, when it comes to doing the same thing in another language. So you
yeah,
have to talk about this aspects because it's also not the same having a negotiation, for example, in English or for us in Portuguese. Like all the cultural aspects are different, right?
yes, yeah, absolutely. And I put in as well the advantages that someone doing it in a second language has. You you are allowed to have more time, for example. You can say, I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. Can I rephrase that? And I think it's important for people to feel comfortable enough to do that. To say, could you say that again? Let me make sure I really got what you're talking about. I have the same when I'm with German in certain things, to make sure I really understood it, especially when it's very complicated language, even though I've been speaking the language for a long time. It's still my
Right.
second language.
So what about, so you mentioned the target audience, but how do you think teachers will benefit from this book, by reading this book? It's not, is it only for finding ideas for activities, or do you think they could get some other kinds of benefits from it?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I mean, it's different from other books on teaching business English, of which I have not seen very many new ones. But a lot of those dealt with, let's look at the corpus linguistics. Let's look at, um, I don't how to use course books. This is quick and easy. If you need something for a class, so I was asked to teach a group of secretaries or administrators at a University of Applied Sciences, and I had no idea what they needed. But they did need to be able to communicate things on the telephone, for example. So take a quick look and say, okay, let me try this out. There's not a lot of preparation. A lot of it is brainstorming with a group. And if you're doing it online, you put it in the chat box, whatever they come up with, ask them for words. What words do you need? It's very much addressing the needs of the learners. There's also a section on business grammar. So the grammar that they really need, they don't need a lot of the very, very complicated stuff, especially at the beginning. But they do need to know the difference between the two present tenses. When to use the progressive, when to use the present simple, for example, or the difference between past and present perfect, because that affects meaning.
Of
And
course.
that's the whole idea. It's not just learning grammar rules. And if they make a mistake, I had it today, my students get confused with little and few. It doesn't matter, the idea comes across. But when they make a mistake between past and present perfect, we're not sure. Are they talking about something that's still going on, or is it in the past? And the other thing that was added to this book is, what did I call it? I have to go and check again. Real world follow up. So each of the activities or grammar points or vocabulary points, the student then goes back to their job and thinks about, did I use this? Do I need this skill? How does it come up in the real world? And then comes back to class and reports on it. And tying it to their jobs, I think, is a very important part of what we do. So
Oh,
if we don't
definitely.
do that,
Yeah.
I think we're missing out on a major area, because that's why they're there. They're not there because it's, something to do in their free time. They're there because they need the language to get things done. They need it in their
Exactly.
jobs. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And so you mentioned that there are other books out there, but how is this book different from other books besides this? I can tell you already that, as I said, I've read the book, so I know how different it is. But let me hear a little bit, from you before I
Uh,
I say what I think.
I had a look at other books in the series, and looking at them, I saw in the introductions they were a lot of references to academic publications. And I asked Dorothy, I said, "Do you want me to do that?" She said, "No." So this is not aimed for an academic audience necessarily. It's not theoretical. It's practical. It is, what can I do on Monday morning? How do I do this with my students? How exactly does it work? I know that I have colleagues who are very interested in the academic part of teaching business English. They want to do research. That's fine. I feel that my research has been going on now for, well, I'd say 50 years. Since before I came to Austria, I worked in advertising. I was a negotiator for buying TV time, and I dealt with major markets. I was spending a lot of money, and I had salespeople that I dealt with every day. So that part of the practical part of what we do was already there. I also ran a little opera company in New York, which dealt with time management and scheduling. And then being in the leadership positions at IATEFL, I learned an enormous amount of practical, can I say, practical skills. How to run meetings, how to set agendas, how to deal with the minutes, how to manage your time, how to establish rapport with people when it's not easy to do. All of these things that are practical. So I would say that's the main thing, is that it's practical, and each tip ties to the individual student. Not saying what to do, it's just saying, have a look at when this comes up for yourself. And I think
Um,
that's
yeah, it
important.
is practical. I agree with you. I think practical is the word to describe this book. But let me say what I thought about the book.
I'd be interested, yeah.
It's the first book I read on this topic that is not boring.
Oh, great.
Okay. It's just so simple to understand. Like if you are starting in the profession or you're very experienced, it's just simple. It's so easy to understand, seriously, and it's not boring. What happens is sometimes you get books that it takes so much energy and I mean, today is hard to manage, like reading a billion books and teaching and preparing lessons and do. So you need to find information that just is to the point and is easy and simple and, as I said, practical. But thank you, Marjorie, because this one is not boring.
Well, that's good to know. For example, in the unit on teaching formal and informal business correspondence, I mean, this is something that students, I know we're getting away from correspondence, and I heard yesterday in a BSIC meeting that, GPT is going to eliminate the need for this. Not sure it's going to happen immediately, but they still need to know the difference between how to start and end a formal and an informal piece of correspondence. I got an email from a secretary that I was working with. She was studying for a Cambridge exam, and she signed it to me in love. And I thought,
Oh,
oh, very, very interesting. I hope she doesn't sign other things that way. I mean, I looked at it and thought, okay, maybe I've been too friendly, but it's not something, it's something I need to tell her. Don't use that. She was a secretary to a member of the board. So
right.
if she writes that to somebody. So the real world follow-up is to ask learners to bring in a formal letter or email they received, as well as a less formal one, even in their own language, so they can compare the differences and it becomes real to them. It's not something that's only in a book. It was on, oh, I remember that from page 5. No,
Hmm.
it relates to me in my workplace.
It's
And
relevant.
that's why it's relevant. Yeah, but I'm glad to know it's not boring.
It's not.
I think business English is fun. I have so much fun teaching it. It's really, really a joy to teach, I have to say. So,
I agree with
no
you.
vacation.
It's my
Yeah.
favorite one. So, yeah. And what about the challenges when, you were writing this book? Did you face any challenges while
Oh,
writing the
goodness.
book?
Yeah. Deciding what to include. And yesterday I thought, oh, I should have included that one more thing and didn't, but that always happens. Making sure that the ideas were really clear, that I was explaining really how to do it. So I know it's in what it is in my head, but getting it across on the page can be very different to make sure that it's really understandable. And defining the areas of lexis, vocabulary that are helpful, and the business grammar. Which stuff do they really need? And then going also the soft skills. Which ones are easy to work with in this format of short and practical ideas? So those were the challenges. Luckily, Dorothy is a wonderful editor, so things that were not clear, she finds and she corrects or says, could you do that again? So that's really important. Yeah, no, this is vital.
Great. And what about teachers? Let's think about integrating all this content and these ideas, into the classroom. How can teachers integrate the ideas from your book into their teaching practice? But more importantly, what kind of results can they expect to see?
Um, okay, that's a good question. Well, okay, integrating it, I think they have to take a look at the table of contents and say, okay, those are areas that I'm planning on covering, and then read those activities. I think in the beginning, we actually recommend reading through the whole book. But if someone has a class and just wants to look at certain areas, look at the table of contents and pick and choose what you want to start with. Now, I think the results for me would be helping the students get over their fear of communicating in English. And I have a group. I met them probably about 5 or 6 years ago. They said they needed some English. They were planning on 3 months. We're now together. Well, I think it's 5 or 6 years. And today was the last day. And I said, we have to talk to HR about continuing. So, and, they'll say things, say, I'm not sure, is this the right word? I said, yes, that's it. You're really making progress. Yeah, but I'm always afraid when I have to speak in front of a group, or they come back and they report, which is called real life testing. Say, I was at a meeting where there were 2 Americans and a British person who didn't speak German, so we had to hold the meeting in English, and I got my ideas across. I said, that's great, because these people are not being tested with an exam. Now, I know at university, we have exams. Some places have the Beck exam or another Cambridge exam or another English language teaching exam. My students don't. They are adults in companies. Their testing takes place in the workplace. And when they can come back from a meeting and tell me that they managed and that they were able to communicate and they understood, that's the test. And that's hopefully the results that we get, because these practical ideas help them to do that.
I agree with you with this fear, It's we deal with, of course, adult students, but they're really afraid. And
Of
as
course.
you said, I would say that this real life test is even harder than a paper-based test.
Of course it is. Absolutely. And I think adults are much more afraid than younger people. And they don't have as much to lose. And especially in companies, the higher up they are in the company, the more they have to lose by making a mistake. And I had a board member phone me countless times. He had to write a card for somebody and he wanted to make sure it was correct. So the bank I teach at has bought up banks in the Balkans, and the language of communication is English. He said, somebody has a birthday and I have to write a card. Is this correct? And we'd go through it. And I totally understand him. He was in a high position. He did not want to embarrass himself. So this is really important, and not to say, oh, how can you not know that? I mean, of course, I think what helps is when we ourselves have learned another language. And I'm trying to learn my third, and I know how difficult it is and how afraid I am to say anything. So it's, but I was lucky learning German that I was actually living as a roommate of somebody who had just had a baby. She was a teacher, but not an English teacher, but she was at home. And she was happy to have somebody to chat with. My German was almost non-existent, but she would always repeat what I said correctly. If I said something wrong, so like in English, if someone said, yeah, I heard, what did the student said today? I heard a news. And she'd say, oh, you heard the news.
Okay.
Without me realizing that she was doing it, say, the news, yeah. And this was wonderful. So that helped me enormously to learn German. Tips
So,
like that.
yeah, hopefully our students are going to realize by listening to this as well that we get nervous too. I've been learning Italian, and I know how nervous I get when I start speaking Italian, and it could be intimidating depending on who you're
Yes,
talking to. Yeah.
exactly. It happens, and people don't realize when they've said something to you that actually is discouraging. They
Yeah.
just don't even realize. And I'm learning Hebrew, which is, I wanted to do something totally different with a different alphabet. And somebody made a comment about my German accented Hebrew. And I
Oh,
thought,
wow.
really? Why would it be German accented? I don't think so. And I don't even want to try.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd rather be with people who are patient and help me out.
That's the whole
Yeah,
partnership,
that's
right?
important.
When you become a business English teacher, you're really partners with your students.
Yes, we are. We definitely are. And we're all learning all the time. And I think that's something we always have to remember.
Marjorie, and what about the feedback from the readers? What kind of feedback have you received from the readers, and how have they influenced your future work?
Oh, good question what the future work's going to be. Not sure. The people who have reviewed it have commented that they like the variety of exercises. They like the structure. They like that it's very clear, that it's easy to find things, that you don't spend a long time searching for something because we don't have time. I mean, I'm totally aware of that. And although I'm a very global learner, I need the big picture. I find that I work best when there's structure, which is interesting. I miss details often, but I still like the structure. I make myself graphs and charts and things. I need them. And a number of people commented on the importance of the connection to the real world of the learner, which we all have to do, but also the idea of it being set out with clear instructions and practical ideas. Practical ideas that you don't need to spend hours preparing for. You don't have to make PowerPoint slides. You don't have to create materials. You do it in class with the learners. And actually, the next idea I have, I just spent today working on it, is to find somebody who's interested in a book on communication skills with NLP techniques. And I did some work on it today because I plan to take it around at IATEFL. So finding situations where an NLP technique, such as establishing rapport, might help a particular situation, or goal setting. Goal setting in NLP is very structured, and it's enormously helpful in coaching situations. So my idea is to take people from different aspects of the working world, not just business English, all aspects, write up the problem, mention the technique that can help, and then have exercises that teachers can use in the classroom. So that's my next idea. And since people
Wonderful.
like the ideas, yeah, I just need to find a publisher.
Yeah, so any publisher out there, if you don't contact Marjorie right away,
Yeah, we'll see. I'm
you're,
going to go around and talk to people.
yeah,
Yeah.
just talk to her, find her. This is going to be great. Yeah. And well, where can teachers find this book, 50 Ways to Teach Business English?
Okay, well, it's on Amazon. You found it in the Brazilian site, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I assume most teachers have an Amazon site. I have to order through Amazon.de, the German one. There are other uh, Amazon sites where it's print on demand, so you can order it as actual paperback, as this one is, or you can have it as the ebook. Did you
I
get
got
the ebook, or did you
the
do
ebook.
print on the ebook? Okay.
Hmm.
I have both. I have the ebook on my e-reader, and I have the print on demand book. It's also available on Kobo, and other outlets can be found on the Ways Goose website if you go to them. Also on my own webpage. Do you have that? It's just www.marjorierosenberg.com.
Oh,
That the
okay.
links are all going to be added as soon as someone has time to do them, who you know, soon.
Yes, I will add the links to my bio, to the link in my bio, and I also have the link that I can share with anybody interested. I can share the link to the book. And it's because it's an ebook and it's easy for you to just, start reading right now. You don't have to wait. You just start reading it. Yeah, and
Exactly.
Marjorie, what about the future of business English? What do you think? How how do you think the future of this was not, in the
Wow.
program?
Um, this is kind of what happened last night. We had a basic roundtable, the roundtables
Hmm.
that Rob does. And he actually had Chat GPT ask the questions, and we all struggled with some of the questions. I know a lot of people think this is going to be the future. My students are kind of, how would I use it? I asked them if they can use it to write emails. They said, our emails are so specific, and by the time we get the computer to realize what we need and then proofread it, I'm not sure. I did try it myself. I've created some text that I have to go through with a student who at the moment is not here. She's on vacation, so I'm curious. I don't know if I can say what the future is. I mean, we discussed this last night for an hour, and we all had different ideas. If you ask one person, they're going to say it's research into business English. If you ask someone else, they're going to say it's corpus linguistics. If you ask someone else, they're going to say it's looking at the corpus in general and finding out where that is. Someone else is going to say it's working online, it's remote working. Someone else is going to say, like me, it's being a practitioner and going into the classroom and doing what the students need. I have to say that the one course book that I did work on, Business Partner for Pearson, that kind of book I think does express the future, because when you go into the website that the students have access to, there's an interactive workbook online. There are loads of activities online for them that they can do in their spare time and that they can get the answers to, and they can work independently. And I think things like that, and that incorporates video and recordings. I mean, a book like this, 50 Ways, can't do that.
Yeah.
But things like Vicky Hollett's simple English videos, which are going to continue. Her husband, Jay, is going to continue with
Oh,
them after she
wonderful.
passed away. Yeah, I was in the memorial session, and her son and daughter-in-law are working with him in Spain to continue those videos. They're fantastic. And using those is great. It's just simple English videos. So I'm sure Jay would love to be interviewed about them. I mean, I use them. They have them on all subjects. Do you use them at all in class?
Yes, of course. They're wonderful.
Yeah, they're wonderful. And
Yeah.
they're broken down into vocabulary, grammar, business English, and so on. And they are fantastic. So that kind of thing, definitely. And otherwise, I don't know. I really don't know. Some people prefer getting homework read to them and
Hmm.
then reading the comments back to students. I think it depends on what kind of teacher you are. I don't like doing that. I'd prefer to get it printed out and to go over it with them. Yeah. So I think I would say the future of business English is open, and it may be whatever the individual teacher makes of it.
Great. Nice.
I think,
And
as I said in the business dictionary, it's not, the future's not in my hands, it's in our hands. Where
true,
we go with it, I think it's up to each of us to decide.
true. You mentioned business partner. I
Yeah.
have it right here. And well, highly recommended. Great book. And I have to agree with you. The contents are so relevant and up to date. Excellent. But again, people listening,
Yeah.
teachers,
Mhm.
buy this new book, 50 Ways to Teach Business English, because seriously, it's the first book that is not boring. I think you
I
can
love it.
use this to advertise the book. The first book on business English that is not boring.
I might have a problem with another past coordinator of BSIC who wrote one of the first books on how to teach business English. So
Because I love it. Seriously, it's just so simple and so practical. We need more like this. So
great.
thank you so much for writing this book. Really.
And there is a new one was added to the series for students as well, how to practice business English.
Oh, great.
So that was added
Great.
by Dorothy just added it. Karen Richardson wrote it. So that's just been added to that series. She has the two, the one for the teachers and the one for the students. So, and you have to think of what you're going to add. How to use social media to teach business English. So, yeah, why not?
Oh, why not?
Be great.
Who knows?
You need 50 ideas.
Yeah.
51. This is always a bonus.
All right. Well, Marjorie, do you want to say anything or maybe leave a tip for new teachers of, new business English teachers, getting started? Or, I mean, do you want to say anything?
Wow. I mean, this is kind of what my ITFL basic plenary was about. And it was about our network. That our network is what holds us together. I mean, if you are not a member of the ITFL Basic Facebook page, you don't need to be a member of ITFL to join this. Join that page. People there are incredibly supportive. I found from my first time at Basic, which was in 1995, that it's just such a welcoming group. Then if some point you decide you want to actually join, that's another option. But even the Facebook page, which gives you opportunities to meet and talk with different people in different areas, is extremely helpful. We all support each other. We often write questions. I get questions. I say, I'm not sure about this. Let me ask in the group. And I get an answer. So I think having that network and knowing that there are people out there to support you is probably one of the best things you can have. And I find it's just been great. Even though we're in a competitive business, people still really, really support each other. And, the connections we make are fantastic. So I think, Karen, we've only met face-to-face once, right? I think.
Once or
Was it
twice?
twice?
Yes.
Once
Yes.
or twice. But I feel like we're next to each other. These connections are so valuable. And I think that's the great part about it.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice.
Right.
Don't, especially if you are working as I did for years as a freelancer, I would go to my class, have my class, and go home. There was no teacher's room. Many institutes don't have a teacher's room. The first time I was in a teacher's room was so exciting because there were other teachers. And I never got to talk to them. And now I go to my students and I come home. But I have ITFL Basic Group and all of my connections. So that's made up for not having the other connections. And we do need to talk to each other.
Yeah.
It's like, like
and by
parents.
exchanging these ideas and talking to people from other parts of the world, this is what make us develop in our career.
An interesting thing came up. I was asked to work with someone at the bank I teach at who was going to Barcelona to talk to people at the biggest bank there about what they do in common and what, I don't know why. I don't get all the information. A lot of it's confidential. But he asked me a really simple thing. He said, in Austria, from about 11 o'clock till 2 in the afternoon, we say Mahlzeit, which means enjoy your meal, even if you're not eating. It's the greeting. Instead of saying hello, they use this. And he said, what do they say in Spain? And I said, wait, I'll find out, because two of the co-authors on Business Partner live in Barcelona. So it's not just Spain in general, specifically Barcelona. One immediately wrote back and said, this is what we say from this time until this time. So I came to the lesson. I said, okay, this is what they say. He said, how did you find that out? I said, my network. He said, that is great. That's exactly the information I need. And it's not something that you might find at Googling, maybe, but you might not be as confident as me saying, and a colleague of mine who lives and works in Barcelona told me this, because it could be very specific just for that area. And it was actually her bank he was going to.
Oh, great.
So, small world.
Great.
But these are the kinds of things that do connect us. And they also raise our status as language teachers. People realize that my students say to me, what we like is that you're very international, you know people all over the world, and you understand our jobs because you have been in leadership positions. So that's another thing to consider.
Something to think
all
about. Yeah.
Yes.
You know?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I haven't been able to follow the chat. Will I be able to see that?
We don't have questions, but we have comments. For example, from Raquel. She says, lovely to hear both of you, Karen and Marjorie. We have hello from Carlos Gontov to you as well.
Okay.
We have, comments. And the Brastiso B6 said, yeah, go get the book on Amazon. Don't miss it. So you see? Lots of people sending just hello and great to hear from you and everything. So, teacher Betty's mentioned, she asked about the name of the book. So the name of the book, the title of the book is 50 Ways to Teach Business English. You can, you can.
The right way or backwards?
It's okay. They can see it. So 50 Ways to Teach Business English. Make sure you get a copy and check it. You can check it on Amazon or have a paper copy printed for you. So,
yes.
Marjorie, I'd like to thank you so much for agreeing to take part in I understand, your very first Instagram Live. So thank you so much. It was wonderful talking to you, and of course being able to understand a little bit more about your thoughts while you were writing the book. And I find it important that people get to know the authors as people as well, you know? So thank you so much for that.
Great. It was wonderful. Thank you, Karen, and thank you for answering all of my questions about this beforehand, because this is my first Instagram Live. I've gotten used to Zoom and Teams, but I've never done this. So, yeah.
It was
Thanks
wonderful.
a lot.
And make sure you follow Marjorie's work. And again, check out 50 Ways to Teach Business English, the book for you to have this year. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And talk to you soon.
Great weekend, everyone. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.